We're joined now by the Offaly County Board Chairman, Michael Duignan. Michael, good morning to you.
Good morning, lads.
What Fergal McGill was saying there, Michael, is pretty much broadly in line with what you were welcoming and hoping would happen with the season when you were speaking at Offaly Convention last week. So I'd imagine you're happy enough with what the GA have settled on.
Yeah, look, I think it'll take a bit of time to see how it goes, but I think it brings a lot of clarity. We saw it last year with the club window, how positive that was for I think for every community across the country to have all your county players, to know you have them at all age groups, not just at senior level. I think it made a huge difference to the standard of training within clubs, and I think just fantastic to see what it brought to back to the clubs, I suppose. Long term, I think we'll have to give it a year or two, and see how the split season goes. It's going to be very hard to judge anything this year, obviously, with COVID, because we don't know where we're going to go in the early part of the year. Logistically, it's going to be very difficult, as it has been. But I think when we get back to normal, or hopefully in the next year or two, it'll be very interesting to see how it works out. The only concern I'd have is, I suppose, is what Fergal said there, is it'll be very early for your club team to be out in April. And I suppose it's the same thing. It'll be very early for our county teams to be out in July, because you're going to be carrying the GA in the second half of the year with your club game. And I think it's far better than what we've had, and we had no choice but to go this way.
When it comes to the inter-county season itself, Michael, Fergal McGill also admitted that, financially it probably would have made more sense to push for just the 1 year that's in it, the county back to the second half of the year again, with their hope that there'll be some fans allowed back into stadiums in the second half of the season. He said, though, that in the end, they looked at the overall welfare of players across the country, and it made more sense not to play club first. I guess a big consideration, I know you would have been looking at these recommendations in recent weeks too, is that when we look at what could potentially happen with the levels going back up from the government later on today, it would have been very difficult to actually play club championship at the turn of the year anyway.
It would have been impossible. As it is, I think this might be a little bit underestimated by people, how difficult it actually is for our county teams. And I think our players deserve so much credit over the last number of months, our inter-county players, for the efforts they put in. One of the great things being a player in junior championship season, and I was lucky enough to be there for a long time, it was playing championship the day of the match. Just small things, travelling together on the bus, having a bit of crack in the dressing room, after the match, maybe after a championship win, brilliant to go back and maybe meet your family and friends and relax that evening. All that was taken away. Like it was quite soulless in ways going to championship matches last, over the winter. We went to Newry a couple of weeks in a row with the hurlers, maybe 40 cars in convoy up the road, stopping in a garage on one of the days to try to get a bit of food. Players in an outdoor car park, getting to the match. It's not, I suppose, what people sign up for, but players didn't mind, they didn't complain, they just wanted to play and they were willing to make the sacrifices. But it was very difficult, and you couldn't just do that at club level. And the financial argument is very valid for the GA at national level, which obviously they're losing a huge amount of money. But I think the only advantage financially is that at least if we get, maybe the vaccine maybe in place during the year, maybe for our club games at the second half year, we will have maybe be able to let our crowds back in, and that could give each county board a massive boost, because if we got, I think there's a huge appetite out there for the club game, so we actually could have a bumper club season, at least maybe allow counties to get back, into a good financial position. So, I think nationally, there's big challenges for the GA. They may have to borrow going forward, but I think in the long term, they'll be well able to carry it. They've proven that before, carrying debt, and I think the government, will be in the background there all along as well. So I think we get through the financial end of it, but I suppose it's about trying to keep the games going for now, and the only way you could do it is as the inter-county players allowed travel and allowed play as an elite sportsman. It's the only thing you could have started with.
Yeah, I feel for some of the players, Michael, who are still waiting for their 2020 semi-finals and finals to be completed in some counties where, the plug had to be pulled, in some cases 6 or 7 days before a county final was due to be played back in late September. Things have been in limbo. Those players, realistically, I know Fergal McGill mentioned yesterday that January is there potentially for those club fixtures to be completed for 2020 that are outstanding. But realistically, with the levels about to jump up again, it could well be next summer before some of those finals are actually completed.
Could be, Will. We were one of those counties, obviously, as you know yourself, Look, it was very disappointing. We lost it 3 weeks as well with the second lockdown, as Kildare and Leach, at that particular time. And we had, that really, that's all we needed was another week. And it was so frustrating. Another week just to get our senior hurling final played. There was other underage finals as well. But look, I suppose our CCC will have to meet very early in the new year, looking at the way things are, looking at even what we heard last night about restrictions coming back in from maybe Christmas Eve. It's not looking good at the minute. So I think to be fair to our club players, we're going to have to be decisive and make the call. As you know how the GA works, it's not a call for me, it's a call for CCC. But you're dragging it on and looking at the county season then when it's going to be, the leagues are going to be starting at the end of February. So the window is getting very small now. So it could be that the matches are deferred for a number of months.
As you mentioned, the inter-county season is going to look a little bit different this year too. I'm interested, just as a former All-Ireland hurling winner yourself, and you would have played in Leinster Championship for many years, how you feel about this structure for the hurling next year, because the round robin isn't going to return. It's still going to be a knockout championship at Leinster senior level, and same with Munster. But to me, it seems very unfair on the face of it that Munster has no relegation, guaranteed that all 5 counties will still be in the championship for 2022. Yet Leinster have set up a situation where you've got Galway and Kilkenny seeded. The other 4 teams will play in quarterfinals, with in all likelihood Laois and Antrim probably losing those quarterfinals and then having to face a relegation playoff for the McDonagh Cup. Is it fair, Michael, the fact that Leinster feels more like a development division, that Munster is entirely protected?
Well, I would have thought the first thing I'd say is that if Kerry had won the Joe McDonagh, I think that they couldn't play in Munster in a shambles, to be honest with you. I think they have to be let into Munster. That's their province, and that should have been the prize, but that didn't happen. Look, it's the way it developed, Will, I suppose, with Galway being out on the outside for so long, that wasn't ideal. At that particular time, the decision was made for them to go into Leinster. And I think in some ways it's benefited Leinster in that it made it much more competitive. That I suppose at that particular time, Kilkenny were winning Leinster every single year, and Galway have added spice, and Dublin obviously have come, and Wexford have improved since. So, I suppose the decision was made at a different time. But it is becoming a bit of a farce to me, that everything is going through Leinster, and that's where all the I suppose, as you said, the development is going on. But at the same time, these things I suppose are changing and moving all the time. We have to look at, and it'll be interesting. That's what I'm saying about the inter-county season, because the reason we changed away from the knockout competition originally, and I suppose I started off my career many years playing knockout championship, and in ways it was brilliant because if you did beat a Kilkenny in a Leinster semi-final, we were gone for the year. But if you got beaten yourself, and it happened I think 3 years in a row in 91, 2 and 3, we were beaten in the first round, narrowly enough, and we were gone for the year. So it was a whole year's training for one match, and that was the negative side of it. But what we've seen, I suppose, is that there's a balance there. I think keeping teams in the championship for too long is as bad, because you're eventually going to maybe get that beaten somewhere along the way, and some of them have been pretty bad in the qualifiers, as we've seen. So I think it's that balance between giving players, inter-county players, a good amount of matches and balancing that knockout element of the competition. And I'm more and more coming down to the National League, that quality of the matches, the competition, the level being the same, that we may be looking at in the future at moving something like that. I think particularly in football, where we've seen the 4 divisions, that the quality of matches from Division 1 to 4 is brilliant, and the matches are exciting, and there's very little between them because teams are at the same level. So I think over the next number of years, that's something that we really have to look at, is that sort of Champions League sort of championship type format, that after 6 or 7 matches maybe in the championship on a league basis, and maybe that would carry it from the spring right to the summer.
Michael, just on the football end of things, and I know this is something you've been tweeting about in recent days, but I guess the Dublin football juggernaut rolled on Saturday evening at Croke Park, and that argument that some people in some quarters, whether it be Dublin ex-players, fans, current players, this argument that money makes no difference to the Dublin success in recent years. What's your reaction when you hear that argument from some quarters?
Well, look, I'll be honest, I'm totally frustrated at this stage with it, and annoyed. And my tweet the other night was in no way aimed at the Dublin players' success. They're some of the greatest players of all time. I don't have to go through them all here now, but Stephen Cluxton, who's performed again. James McCarthy is probably one of my favourite players of all time, if not my favourite. And there are many, many brilliant players that would have been brilliant players, I think, regardless. And this argument, money doesn't help you kick it over the bar, and money doesn't win tight matches. I think they're missing the point completely. In terms of, if you look at it, we're supposed to be an amateur organisation, and I don't want to be seen to be whinging here from Offaly's point of view. I think we have to help ourselves as well. I think a huge part of our development in the future will be down to us having a sustainable fundraising arm attached to the county board. You have to get in your own money if you want to grow. But Dublin did was, or what the GA did was, they reached out and helped Dublin back in whatever 2006 or 2007. Sean Kelly has spoken about it. And at that particular time, the GA in Dublin wasn't in good shape, as we all know. And it was important for the GA that it was in a much better position. So they got in and they helped Dublin. What Dublin have done with that has been amazing. And if you take it from the top, where it started with John Costello coming in as the CEO, who's done a fantastic job. I don't know if people realise this, but the only grant from Croke Park available to full-time staff is to give every county €30,000 a year. Now, if you take our situation in Offaly, we have an operations manager. That's our only full-time staff. And by the nature of the title, operations, is you're dealing with day-to-day. They've replaced maybe the role of the secretary years ago with the heavy lifting on a day-to-day basis. That's not going to give you the vision and the strategic platform to grow your county the way Dublin did. So Dublin have a CEO, they have a commercial manager, they have a full-time strength and conditioning manager, they have lots of administrative staff. I don't know exactly how many staff they have. And that's only on that side. And the only thing they get towards that from GEA is 30 grand a year, the same as the rest of us. Now, that's not going to go very far. They have the resources then to obviously support that. And that's before you start looking at the coaching side where Dublin have. I don't know how many GPOs in Dublin, maybe yourself or will do, but I think it could be anywhere in the region of 80 or 90. It's hard to get an answer on that one when you ask it. I know there's one club that have 4. We started the year in Offaly with 4 full-time coaching staff. We're down to 2 because of lads left. So we're probably reflective of a lot of the smaller counties in that we've 1 full-time staff and we've a couple of coaching staff, and we're taking on this. So the point I'm making is Dublin got their support when they needed it. But they don't need it now. They made 2.7 million profit last year on their operations, and fair play to them. And fair play to their players for whatever they can make out of the game commercially. But my point is that other counties like ourselves need support now. Yes, we need to support ourselves. Yes, we need to go out there and raise money. Dublin have done that. And we had our success that attracted the sort of sponsorship deal that we could really dream about with the AIG. The 4 million over 5 years. I think that would take us about 80 years for our county sponsor to bring in. So they're the I suppose, the realities of it. There's also population and all those things that weren't a factor. And I would ask the question, people say no one was complaining when Dublin weren't winning. I would say, no, we need to support Dublin. There'll be a huge population. We need to grow the game there. And that was done. And I think it was justifiably done. But I think now it's very evident that Dublin don't need the support. I just did a quick sum. I think from 2007 this year, Dublin got about 20 million in central funding. Thereabouts. We got about £1 million in Offaly. And I suppose that would be reflective of the cost of it. So I think Dublin have got their support, but I don't think they need it anymore. I think they can sustain themselves, and I think we need to look at. And I think not admitting that looks to me to be so weird that if anybody thinks that money doesn't make a difference, you're living on another planet. Of course it does.
Michael, and not to labour the point, but with the ladies winning, 4 in a row at the weekend, and we've seen the improvements, the vast improvements in Dublin hurling at minor under 20 and senior level over the last number of years. Do you foresee a situation within the next number of years where we see 6 in a rows at all age grades and all levels for Dublin GAA?
Well, that is a possibility, but I think that's what I'm saying is we need. I'm not involved in the Offaly job to accept that Dublin are going to win every All-Ireland or that Kenny were going to beat us when I was a player or anything else like that. You have to be ambitious and you have to help yourselves. And I suppose what we need to do in Offaly, it's a much smaller county, is we need to build our structures. We need to put it. I suppose the big challenges that we have in Offaly this year, and that COVID is really killing us in terms of doing this, but we have to establish a sustainable long-term coaching model, which is based on the GPO model that Dublin have. And I'd like to see by the end of this year us having 7 or 8 GPOs on the ground, and we're meeting Leinster on the 13th of January to try to get that going. We need to do some serious fundraising ourselves. It's not a good time for Leinster or Central GA to support us. But when we get back to normal, I think we have to look at the model. And it is a possibility. And Dublin have got their act together. So we have to get up there. You can't Dublin is not going to stop now. Was it fair? I don't think it was. I think it was let go too far. Other counties were let lag behind. But some of that, we have to take responsibilities as counties. Did we stand up and shout and fight for ourselves? Did we do anything about it? No is probably the answer at a large extent. But this fobbing off, I think, that goes on. Like Dublin are a very, very powerful brand. And if you challenge Dublin players, if you challenge the Dublin, you know yourselves, you're in media up there, it's very difficult. They're difficult questions to ask. And I don't hear them asked too often. I hear them asked of the president of GA, of Tom Ryan, or of Dublin players writing articles every week in the paper and they're saying it makes no difference, money makes no difference. Well, it does, lads. It makes a big, big difference. And I'm finished with G this morning. I have to go off and do 3 or 4 hours of a few meetings with GA related. And then I have to get back to it tonight. And I run my own business as well. And we've one staff member who's up to his eyes with the operations on a day-to-day basis. We're fully dependent on volunteers, and Dublin have a full-time professional staff behind them, which has to make a massive difference.
Well, Michael, before you go to those meetings, Dublin aren't in either of the Leinster minor finals this season, but Offaly are in both. I would imagine at the tail end of your first year as chairman, you must be delighted to have Offaly in both Leinster minor football and hurling finals coming up now in the first weekend of January. A few green shoots for your county there. Yeah,
look, it's massive, Will. It's just last weekend to get the boost. I was in Newbridge on Saturday, in Mullingar on Sunday at the 2 matches, and it gives you great hope. And it's just it's again about those players, their families. I love the way, the honesty about them. Look, the 2 massive challenges, and not being political about this, but forget about the Kenny and the hurling and Meath and the football, and Meath have beaten Dublin, so makes them favourites. But just for the lift, I think it gave everybody. There's a huge honesty to the setup there, and very lucky with Ken Furlong is involved with the manager of the minor footballers, and obviously a great family tradition. Their son playing, and their son and grandson of Martin Furlongs, and Al Daly is there with him, and Stephen Lonergan from Borough, and they're all steeped in it. Barry Kelly's giving them a handout, and Leo O'Connor's coming up from Limerick. People looked at that probably as a strange appointment, that why would we go to Limerick for somebody? But Leo's done a fantastic job, and he was very involved with the Limerick academies, so brought a lot of experience. He brings a calmness to it as well. But the way the players have bought in, and I think with the Faithful Fields, maybe it's beginning to show its value. Because it's the one thing we have in Offaly is we have fantastic facilities, and people were critical maybe of the development of O'Connor Park. It has left us with a debt. I was involved as the chair of the fundraising in O'Connor Park, and I chaired the finance in Bedford Field as well, which we managed to build debt free. We had to. That was one of the things we said, we can't bring more debt on the county. Didn't, and we achieved it debt free, but it does take a lot of money to run it. That's the next stage of it. The actual maintenance of O'Connor Park and Fields and the debt on O'Connor Park, they're huge figures in an annual budget. But that's a different one. But I think to see the lads going out there, I think for everyone trained together, the fantastic facilities we have out there, it gives us a base. You're not going around wondering where you're training. And when you go out there, there's a total professionalism to the setup out there. So look, it gives us a great base to work on, Will. And look, I just loved it. I love this, like us all, for Christmas. I love this COVID could go away, but get the vaccine up and running, just to give us a chance to. I think there's a great goodwill out there now towards Offaly. We've always had great supporters, and we need their support now. We need our business community to come in behind us. We lost €270,000 last year, which to us is a massive sum, and we have to raise that money in the first 4 or 5 weeks of the new year if we're going to be able to stay going next year. So we have a big year ahead of us, but at the same time, really looking forward to it, and really looking forward to our 2 minor teams and Leinster fans.
Yeah, plenty of work ahead. Michael, thanks a million for joining us this morning, and have yourself a very Merry Christmas as well.
Same to you, lads. Thanks a lot.